What's up, wall fans, common sensors, and of course, podcast consumers? Welcome to another very exciting video feed for Go Tell It to the Wall. That's right, this is not actually a Common Sense Sundays. It is a vintage Go Tell It to the Wall episode, given the day of the week and the numbering and all that kind of stuff. But we'll get into that explanation a little more throughout the actual episode. Sorry, I'm adjusting my chair here. All right, all that being said, let's get right into episode 134.
Who, 1, 2, 3, go tell it to the wall. Tell it to the wall. Go tell it to the wall. Tell it to the wall.
All right, wall fans, common sensors, podcast consumers, welcome to another very exciting, very new edition of Go Tell It to the Wall podcast. This is episode 134, hosted by me, your absolute favorite podcast host, the one and only Sean O'Rourke. And that's right, for those of you used to seeing the Common Sense Sunday moniker, once in a while we do come out with a new one of these. They tend to be like off-schedule episodes and all that kind of good stuff. And yes, it is Wednesday, and this may seem weird for many of you out there, but we have this minor tradition of recording an episode the Wednesday of Thanksgiving week. So before we get into the meat, or the turkey of this episode, I guess you could say, we always kick things off with our social plugs. You can keep up with us you can keep up with us before episodes, after episodes, during episodes, whenever you so please, and you can do that in multiple locations. One of those would be facebook.com/go-tell-it-to-the-wall. That's right, facebook.com/go-tell-it-to-the-wall. That is our official Facebook page. Make sure you go on there, like and follow to get all your updates on a weekly basis, weekly, daily, monthly, however often you want to check back. And of course, we have our official YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/go-tell-it-to-the-wall. That's right, youtube.com/go-tell-it-to-the-wall, or at go-tell-it-to-the-wall. Both of those, if you put it into YouTube, will take you to our official YouTube channel. And then, of course, my own personal Instagram account, which is at SoCalSean. That's right, SoCalSean, at SoCalSean, right there on Instagram. Not everything pertaining to Common Sense Sundays Go Tell It to the Wall, but it is relevant to a lot of stuff that we discuss here on the podcast and through our YouTube channel and all that good stuff. And in fact, I keep looking at the sign behind me, and it currently has our Twitter handle, which is pretty much dormant. I think I'm going to change that to the Instagram handle or maybe the YouTube handle and just have that behind me, because we don't really use the Twitter account at all. It just sits there. We used to post new episodes there and blah, 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 but, Twitter's a hellscape. I have no interest in involving this podcast on Twitter at this point. All right, and then in addition to those things, don't forget to check back or bookmark and check back often SeanO'RourkeLive.com. That's right, SeanO'RourkeLive.com. That's our official website for anything and everything pertaining to Go Tell It to the Wall, to myself, and all of our great content that we put out there. You're also going to find exclusive stuff that doesn't get posted to any of the social platforms. So again, make sure you're checking back often for any of that exclusive content. And on there, you're going to find a couple of different links that I want to mention. If you want to support us financially, a great way to do that is through Patreon. You can become a patron of Go Tell It to the Wall and support us financially, and you'll find a link for that right on the website. And then if you don't want to do that, but do want to support us financially, another way you can do that is by picking up some merch, some Common Sense merch from our merch website, which links directly from SeanO'RourkeLive.com. That's right. All right, now that we've gotten the housekeeping out of the way, this is always an odd month, and I get messages and stuff, and I have to remind people it is November. It is crazy. We have Punk in the Park. Yes, I'm wearing my Punk in the Park shirt. For those of you not watching the video, this is this year's shirt. And then my daughter's birthday, my birthday, and of course, Thanksgiving. So we're almost to the end of that November gauntlet that I feel like I've mentioned the past 3 years, essentially. It was always a gauntlet. Then we threw in Punk in the Park, which this was the third year of it. And so essentially every weekend of mine is taken up in November. So it's just, we're almost through it, and finally got some time to get into the studio and record an episode. And of course, this is the day before Thanksgiving 2023, so I want to wish everyone a very happy Thanksgiving. I understand, and I bring this up every year. For those of you that have been longtime listeners, you know this. I understand the problematic background of Thanksgiving. We don't, in my house and in my opinion, we shouldn't be celebrating those things. However, it is kind of an extra couple of days where you get to spend time with your family. You have an excuse to eat a ridiculous amount of food, drink some tasty beverages, whatever it might be. So along those lines, and in respect to family time and close friends and all that kind of good stuff, that's what I mean when I say Happy Thanksgiving. Not the origins of Thanksgiving itself, because we all know how problematic that is. Whether you want to be ignorant about it or not, it's problematic. I don't mean to laugh in a ha-ha way. It's just like, really? So many people in the world these days ignore facts. And the fact is, it has a problematic background. Let's all admit that and really just use it as a time to celebrate with family. How do I have a stain on this shirt? This shirt has only been worn once. Oh my gosh. Yeah, there's like a little stain right here. And then, so what happens is I look at it in the monitor and then it starts bugging me throughout like the whole show. There's some kind of little small, oh well. It's like, where's Waldo? Where's the stain? Can you all find the stain here? It's going to bug the heck out of me. Oh, that's what I get. Festival shirts. Am I right? No, it's totally like a little, all right. We're going to work on this here. There it goes. It was actually like some extra fuzz, not even a stain. I was like, how do I have a stain on this shirt? I wore it once. Anyway, so happy Thanksgiving to all of you out there. Thank you. I am thankful for all of you continuing to listen and deal with me yelling at a wall on a weekly basis and me staring at my shirt for a good 30 seconds while I investigate a stain that turns out to be some funky fuzz that's stuck in the threads of the shirts. All right, moving along to digital trends. We got some good stuff this week, some ridiculous stuff, but good content, I guess you could say. I'm always thankful to this son of a bitch for giving me content on an almost weekly basis, and that would be Elon Musk. I'm not happy about the content he's given me, but nonetheless, he's always good for ridiculous content. That's just how it is, and this would be one of those situations. If you've been on Twitter at all or paying attention to the news, Elon is coming under extra fire right now, and that is because, and we all, it's subjective. We've seen a lot of anti-Semitism, racism, and misinformation and anti-vax and all kinds of stuff on Twitter. And it really has just come to a full-time head where Musk blatantly, and I'm not going to get into exactly what he posted on Twitter, but was rightfully called out, and it was blatantly anti-Semitic. There's no gray area here with what he was saying. And many, many people called him out for it, rightfully so. And he's finding himself in hot water, and it's funny. Whenever something like this happens, I start getting, because I don't use Threads a lot, but I'm on Threads. I start getting Threads notifications because everyone's like jumping over to the Threads with Twitter being such the hellscape that it is. And I noticed that over the past week or so, kind of as all this stuff was breaking. And then it's actually starting to hit him hit him in his pocketbook. Turned into my father there for a moment. Hit him in his pocket because based on those most recent posts that he had is what brings me to my next digital trend here. A lot of advertisers are leaving Twitter. In fact, not leaving Twitter completely. What they're doing, and it's so funny, they call it a pause. But many companies have put a pause on their advertising within Twitter. IBM was actually one of the first ones to do it, and they came out and said, this is the reason we're doing it, is because the guy that owns this app and website is blatantly anti-Semitic. And then, of course, some other companies followed shortly after. Among them is Disney, Warner Brothers, Comcast, Apple. Many of those have pulled advertising from Twitter. They've at least paused it for now, but I have a feeling we will see a permanent pause. Does that make sense? A stop? See, film school. Pause and stop. You learn how to use VCRs. No, I don't think I used a VCR once in film school. They make you use real film. It's kind of a pain in the butt. But anyway, see, we're getting tangented already. That's what we do the day before Thanksgiving. I feel like on a yearly basis. Trying to cram everything in. I got to get up tomorrow and make like 15 pounds of mashed potatoes. It's going to be a wild time. That's right, getting tangented yet again. So let's move along there. Twitter is dying a slow death. I think that's the point we're trying to make here, is Twitter's dying a very slow and seemingly painful death. And I think this might be one of the final nails in the coffin, because he's gotten so blatant with it. It's not even tongue-in-cheek. It's not a gray area. It's black and white, and he has crossed that line absolutely at this point. Many of us knew he was crossing the line already, but now advertisers are pulling money from his site, and that's how Twitter makes money, is advertisers. And I guess the people that pay for that Twitter blue shit, but come on, how much money is that making? All right, Dickie Barrett. Oh, we're going to talk about him a little later on. For those of you not aware, I will get into the details of it later on, but he's found himself in some hot water lately. and really has for a couple years now, ever since Mighty Mighty Boss Tones broke up because of his anti-vax stance and hatred and all this kind of stuff. And but it has come out recently where he is arguing with people on Instagram. This one actually has to do with Instagram quite a bit, and it hasn't been pretty. And that's the thing, is sometimes you see people that respond on social platforms and whatnot, but most times, people complain about celebrities and people of note, and you don't see those people actually replying and getting into a back and forth with them. Dickie Barrett has saw fit to get into a back and forth with multiple fans on Instagram. And the funny thing is, he's just, without ever answering an actual question, he's just dodging everything, which is really amusing, because people are like, well, what is your deal with this? And he's like, well, I don't know. What we all have freedom, don't? It's like, dude, these fucking canned answers. Just shut up. Just shut up. He's arguing with people on, like, that's never going to get you anywhere. I can tell you from experience, especially on Instagram. Who argues on Instagram? That's what Twitter's for. Argue on Twitter. Don't argue on Instagram. I just want to see pictures of kids and people living their lives and bands and stuff like that. I don't need to see stupid Dickie Barrett getting into it with people. And in fact, I have a friend who had commented a couple things in this particular thread where he was arguing with people. And that comment got taken down because it made too much common sense, I'm sure. And I can't remember the exact comment, but he had posed it to many of us in a Discord where we're all in the same one, and we were like, yeah, do it. And then like 10 minutes later, he goes, yep, I did it, and they pulled the comment down. So like I said, we're going to talk more about that later on as we get into to common sense here. All right, hashtag thankful. This is, of course, trending on all the social platforms right now. And this is what I mean by and we shouldn't ignore the problematic background of Thanksgiving. It should be discussed. However, it shouldn't take away from the positive things that can come out of Thanksgiving. Like I said at the top of the show, with family and friends, spending time, having a little extra time off, ridiculously stuffing yourself with food. That is one of my highlights of Thanksgiving every year. But hashtag thankful, and people are sharing what they're thankful for. That is another side of it where you get to tell people what you're thankful for. You get to let people know that you are thankful for them, whatever it might be. So people are sharing that. If you're looking for some wholesome content on the social platforms, hashtag thankful would be the way to go. And like I said at the top of the show, I'm thankful for every one of you out there that actually takes the time to listen to this, takes the time to support us through Patreon or through the merch website, takes the time by sharing our episodes, all that kind of good stuff. And then, of course, I'm also very, very thankful for my family and friends. It takes an immense support system to deal with somebody like me, somebody who deals with mental illness and all kinds of other things. And I'm incredibly grateful for the community that I have around me, whether it's acquaintances, friends, good friends, and, of course, family. Those are things I'm very thankful for, really on a daily basis, but especially this time of year. All right, Turkey and Costco. These were two separate trending things, but they actually they were trending for the same reason. So there was a Fox News segment that came out like last week at some point, or maybe over the weekend, whatever it was, and some Fox News personality was on there saying they paid $90 for a turkey. And so, of course, people jumped on this and said, and don't get me wrong, I'm not going to sit here and say inflation's not real. It's very real. But to blatantly lie to listeners and make them believe that you're paying $90 for a turkey is utterly absurd. And that's why Costco came in trending here, is then people responded to this segment by saying, look, here is a turkey at Costco. And the Costco turkeys are like 99 cents a pound. This guy wasn't getting a 90-pound turkey. If you're eating a 90-pound turkey, it is not good for you. Turkeys aren't supposed to be 90 pounds. They don't grow that big. It's not a freaking horse or a deer. It's a turkey. It's a bird. So really, you're talking about $15-20. You get a 15-pound turkey, it's about $15. And the grocery stores as well have the turkeys much cheaper. Now, I will say, this person that had said, I don't even know who the hell, not important. I don't want to give too much time to these talking heads that are spewing lies to their viewers, but actually had come out and with an image of a turkey that did cost like $100, but it was one of those. And I'm going to make fun of where I live right now. It was like an LA Hollywood turkey. It was very, organic and vegetarian, all these things. And you're like, well, I'm sure, yes. But what average person is paying for that kind of turkey? Go get yourself a Butterball, $15-20. A lot of times the grocery stores, they'll have it buy one, get one free. It's like stuff like that where the turkeys are they want to just churn through the turkeys It's like rotisserie chickens at Costco. I doubt they're making a ton of money. They just want to churn through them because it's going fast. And this is the time of year when turkeys are going, this and Christmas. So really that's what's going on there. But I really enjoyed the people posting pictures of turkeys. And then talk about a cell phone. This guy posting like it was like $114 turkey. And like posts and it has the whole description on the front. And you're like, well, that's why it is $114 because you're paying for this like crazy, crazy turkey that probably was raised inside a house and the most perfect diet and all this stuff. It's like, nah, just get a damn Butterball or one of the others. Butterball's not my favorite, but there's plenty out there. You don't need to get these, $90 for a turkey. It's obscene. All right, one more thing I want to mention here in digital trends. Kind of took everybody by surprise last week. Snoop Dogg, yes, the one and only Snoop Dogg, put out a tweet or a post somewhere, and it just said, "I am giving up smoke. Please respect my decision at this time," or something. I'm not. It involved I'm giving up smoke, and he made it seem like, and so a lot of people were like, "Oh my gosh, Snoop Dogg's gonna quit smoking weed and all this other stuff," and then a lot of people like myself were like, "Okay, something. This is not." And keep in mind, he employs a full-time blunt roller, so he would have been putting somebody out of their job, and I think he's had this person for like years and years. So flash forward a couple days, and we find out, which was I had a feeling it would be something like this. He was actually doing it to promote a smokeless grill of some kind, and I can't remember the exact brand offhand. They don't pay me to advertise it, so it doesn't matter what the brand is, but it was all about a partnership with this company that has smokeless grills. He's not actually giving up smoking weed. Apparently, he's giving up smoking on grills, which I understand. I get the appeal of a smokeless grill. But have you ever had a smoked pulled pork? Oh, God. Sometimes smoke can be good on the grill. Let me just tell you that. But that he's sent everyone into a Twitter. But it was all about smokeless grills, not actually quitting smoking of other things. All right. Let's move along to some mental health. I don't have a ton of stuff this week, but this is kind of a reminder I give every year right around this time. So let's get into some of that mental health stuff. Navigating friends and family this week. Often arguments pop up. There have been ad campaigns about it, all kinds of stuff, especially ever since 2016, when things became just extra divided here in the U.S. And so keep in mind that this is a common thing that can happen, and remind yourself if it's worth debating. And the reason I bring this up from a mental health standpoint is look at what is worth your mental health when it comes to arguing or debating with friends and family around the holidays, specifically around Thanksgiving, because really it's eating, drinking, and, Christmas, you're doing, it's craziness of Christmas. Thanksgiving is you're cooking, eating, and drinking and talking, So this kind of kicks that off, and ignore the pressure, which is another important thing, because we tend to not only put pressure on ourselves around this time of year, everybody does it, but you get pressure from your family to participate in certain things, to go to a certain house for dinner, whatever it might be. And again, you need to weigh your mental health and your own physical health, really, with maybe possibly being, disappointing a little bit to some family members, whatever it might be. And that is something to keep in mind, because hanging out with family, and I'm very lucky. And, well, in my extended family, it can be a bit more of a challenge. And that's if you have one of those big Thanksgivings, you're going to have a lot of differing opinions. But I am spoiled because it doesn't come up a ton within, my immediate, smaller extended family, I guess you could say. And definitely don't sacrifice your health for traditions. Just because, grandma and grandpa say you got to do things a certain way, or, and not there's anything wrong with going to church if that's what you want to do, but you got to go to church, whatever else it might be. Don't sacrifice your health just because someone says it's a tradition. That's an important thing to keep in mind. And another thing to keep in mind this time of year is your friends who might feel left out. Again, I'm fortunate. I have family. I have friends close by. There's such an incredible support system. But I also try to remind myself that not everyone has that. So as much as it's okay to avoid things, it's also good to make sure your friends and family are not feeling left out, and this isn't like necessarily saying you got to throw them a big party or whatever it is, but just reach out and say, hey, how are things? How, and even the littlest thing, a phone call, a text, whatever it might be, you could really lift someone up who doesn't have a large community that they're spending time with, this week particularly, and really over the next month or so. Which brings me to my next point. Keep this in mind, not just this week, but over the next month, because we obviously go Thanksgiving and then into the holidays and all the madness starts, and you can feel, again, pressure to be perfect, especially when we start moving into Christmas. You get so concerned with buying the perfect gifts, making sure everything's perfect, and I'm guilty of this myself, because when you have kids, oh my God, you're really working to make things magical for them. And don't get me wrong, it's extremely fun, but it can be extremely stressful at the same time. So keep that in mind over the next month and a half as we navigate Thanksgiving and the holidays and everything else. And not only that, be conscious of it, but also take time for yourself. Take time to breathe. Go watch a holiday movie by yourself. Watch a comedy, whatever you enjoy consuming from an entertainment standpoint. Do that for yourself, not necessarily for other people. Because then that's going to get you a little more rested and a little more prepared to deal with the madness that is the holidays. And all of these things can be an absolute stress on your mental health. I recognize that. The holidays are always tough on my mental health. I recognize that. My wife knows that. So tend to try not to put pressure on myself, but then that pressure comes. And fortunately, again, I have a support system of people who are going to respect, that I'm doing my best when it comes to certain things. But then, like I said, it is the stress of having a child and making sure everything is perfect for them. And it's one thing a fellow parent told me years ago was to look at the holidays like through the eyes of your own kid, even though you can get cynical and you're worried about spending all this money and whatever it might be. But if you look at it through their eyes, it really does put a perspective on how they see the holidays and how they're enjoying their time. And really, it makes you kind of enjoy it on a different level. Of course, but it kind of brings you back to when you had a more innocent understanding of the holidays and everything else. All right, let's talk some positive news. Oh, sorry, my voice is okay, but for some reason it's everybody's got allergies here in Southern California right now. It's just that time of year. It's like, oh my gosh. And it's funny, a couple weeks ago I thought I was getting sick, and then there was another parent at the school, and we're walking home at the same time, and she goes, oh man, it's these allergies. And I was like, oh, that's why I'm not super congested, but I don't get it as bad as a lot of people, but I definitely feel the effects of the allergies at certain times of year, and this would be one of the times of year. All right, positive news. Now, as much as I said holidays can be stressful and everything else, there is some greatness to the holidays, and especially this week. We all get a little extra time off. So from a positive standpoint, for me personally, I've been absolutely exhausted. This November gauntlet and everything else, and even tomorrow can be stressful. We got to cook and all this other stuff. I get that. But it is an extra couple days. And we're going to talk about Black Friday and that kind of stuff. I don't participate in that madness. So Thursday tends to be a little busy. There's cooking, it's madness, but then Friday rolls around and I'm like, let's relax. I gradually bust out the Christmas holiday decorations over the next few days, but tend to relax myself a little. Now, that being said, my wife's going to yell at me because I'll go on a crazy cleaning spree Saturday at some point, which I call fall cleaning, but it actually relaxes me. I am one of those psychopaths that thoroughly enjoys organizing, and when I'm given some extra time and know I have to pull out a bunch of like Christmas decorations, everything else, I tend to just go through and organize and clean everything. I've actually already been working on it this week. The reorganizing stuff in the studio, our living room, my kids' room had to be. Oh God, that's the thing. Kids, so all the toys just everywhere. Trying to get my kid, on the cleaning train, I guess you could say. But it's tough when they're at a certain age. So that's what I'm taking from this week, and that's my positive news for this week. And on top of that, and I hope people I will not stand for this turkey slander. I hear so many people talk and they're like, turkey's overrated and blah, blah, blah. You know what? It's fine if you don't like turkey. Let's not talk bad about it. I'm a turkey fiend. Now, I eat deli turkey quite a bit. I enjoy a good turkey sandwich for lunch. But I have, like, roasted fresh turkey really, maybe if I catch it at a restaurant that's doing it on a sandwich, but really once a year, and that's Thanksgiving. So I am going to eat a gigantic plate of turkey and mashed potatoes and gravy tomorrow, and then a separate plate with all the other junk, because that's just how I roll, and that's what's bringing me some positive vibes this week. All right, speaking of kids, let's get into some parenting. It's just dry in my studio. I'm drinking more water than usual, I can tell. There's, in fact, water in my mug this week. It's not straight vodka like it is sometimes. It's never straight vodka. I talk about a terrible lame dad joke that I make every time. Oh, yes, it's straight vodka. We all know it's just water. When I'm drinking in the studio, it is a beer. This podcast was originally built on a beer of the week and a beer of the episode. So that is just water. But it is fighting this dry weather that we've got going on here. The winds have been, oh my God, the winds. Oh, my yard is just thrashed with leaves and stuff, and because we get the heavy winds this time of year here in Southern California. All right, like I said, parenting. Time off this week. I mentioned in positive news, most adults are off Thursday, and I recognize some people are working, but for the most part, and I've been off Thursday and Friday the majority of my life. I did work retail at one time, so I was working Fridays here and there, a couple Fridays, but really for 40 years, Thursday, Friday, and that's how it is for me this year, and for many people out there. However, and I thought this was just Los Angeles at first, because I'd just seen it here, but I've seen other parents post from other states about how their kids are out of school all week. When I was a kid, we usually got out of school early on Wednesday. You obviously had Thursday off, and you had Friday off, and then Saturday is the weekend, and then you go back Monday. Nowadays, kids get the entire week off. So my kid has been out of school since Monday. She has had no school all week. In fact, took advantage of it, had a sleepover. Unfortunately for my wife and I, things were a little bit slower this week. I had a crazy Monday with a lot of stuff going on, but so we're able to keep her entertained. But there's only so much you can do. It's fighting the boredom. And I either sit in here working on podcast stuff, photo editing, video editing, or I'm working on design stuff for the agency that I work with. And a lot of times if I'm working on that, I might even be on a call. And my daughter, she's all past few days comes in, I'm bored. And it's like, have you seen the house? Like, you have so many things, but you got to keep them entertained. And that's been the challenge, and has the past couple years, and especially at the age she is now. It's just like, I'm bored. And that word comes out. I think all kids hit a certain age and they just start saying that, even if they're not really that bored. I mean, I vaguely remember doing it as a kid myself, and that's what we're doing. But it's an entire week of that, trying to keep them entertained. So it is a bit of a challenge, I guess you could say. And we're also coming out of the birthday fog. Like I said, we're coming out of the November gauntlet. That is my Novembers on a yearly basis. And this is also what inspires the fall cleaning every year. Is my daughter gets a new toys for birthday, and grandparents are spoiling her and sending her stuff, and so my living room and her bedroom turn into this like dumping ground for packaging, and finding all those little plastic like tag things, and tape and packaging, and everything's packaged like crazy. And if you have kids, this, and depending what kind of toys they're into, but if you're unwrapping like dolls and like Barbie type dolls, not stuffed animals plush, but good Lord. It's like they put every possible securing mechanism in there, and you're just sitting there with scissors for 20 minutes until you finally get the doll free, and then shit's flying everywhere. So that's what I've been dealing with, and that does inspire me because, like I said, the fall cleaning, you got to reorganize and find a place to put all this new stuff. She's very fortunate. People love buying her gifts for her birthday, between grandparents and close friends and family friends and her friends and everything else. It is a plethora of stuff. And then I made it even worse. And it was well worth it, but she had received some birthday money, from her grandfather, my wife's father. And so last week my wife was out of town. That's the other part of the gauntlet, is my wife leaves for a week every year in November, between my daughter's birthday and my birthday. And so I'd said, you know what? Friday after school, if you want, we can go to Target and you can pick out a few toys. And this is she calls him Nono. It's because that's Italian for grandfather. And I said, Nono gave you some money. We can go and pick stuff out. So I took her, and she absolutely loved it. I think when kids hit a certain age, they love this independence, kind of being able to pick out their own stuff. And she's definitely at that age where she'll just go up and down the aisles. And she's also getting to the age where, like, a year ago, it was more challenging because she just wanted to get everything. And now it's like, no, you can pick a couple things. Well, how much is it? Okay, that's maybe another small thing, whatever it might be. And just thoroughly enjoyed that. But then, of course, come back Friday, I'm just getting the house under control. More packaging all over the place, for Pete's sake. At least it wasn't wrapping paper because she was picking them out. That's the thing. The wrapping paper, the gift bags, and all this. Oh, it's just madness everywhere in my house. And she's actually getting the last of her, and I will say, it's a proud father moment, which I didn't even put in my notes here. She's been wanting a skateboard. So somehow my wife found a My Little Pony skateboard, and she told me about it. She's like, okay, I ordered it. I was like, whoa. Because if you've had any experience with skateboards, it's like this with anything. You see this warning every year at Christmas time, like, don't buy the cheap guitar at Walmart. Go to the local music shop. You may pay a little bit more, but you're going to get more quality. So I'm like, oh, shoot, is this some cheap, junky skateboard? And then it arrived, and I went, oh. And this is a brand. It's funny. I told my brother-in-law, I was like, oh, look, it's this Enjoy brand. It's ENJOI, which is a newer. I'm aging myself. It's been around for a long time. But when I was doing a lot of skateboarding, as a teenager and even in my early 20s, Enjoy didn't exist. But it is a quality brand skateboard. And another tip for all of your parents out there, if your kids are starting to get into skateboarding, apparently fingerboards have come back. They're making this comeback. And my kid wanted this whole skate park set that actually Hot Wheels had put together. It comes with little fingerboards and stuff. And they have shoes now, which is crazy. I'm like, oh, we've gotten way fancier than when I was a teenager. Because those were very popular, like, when I was in high school. So I was a little aged out, but I did have a fingerboard at one time. I skateboarded. So it was like, oh, cool little fingerboard. But I wasn't of the right age to really be doing it. But now they're coming back. And so she not only got a skateboard, but she got this little skate park that she's been thoroughly enjoying. And my kid is also very much into Barbies. She had a My Little Pony birthday party. She got a bunch of Barbies. She has learned to integrate those two things together, as I have seen Barbies wearing these skateboarding shoes and utilizing the skate park. So you can put all those things together. But she's actually, milestone, kind of last birthday present for her, she's actually out now getting her ears pierced. So, milestone for her. Going to be a little bit of a rough day for me, which was one of those funny things. She's wanted it for a couple years, and we said, okay, you know what? When you hit a certain point, we can do it if you'd like. But it was odd for me because, like, in my family, like, the girls in my family got their ears pierced when they were all very young. It was just kind of it was a thing. You did it when you were young and like much younger than my kid is. And she has friends that have had their ears pierced for years. And it's like, okay, I can't really deny this. And I don't have any reason to deny it. I have one ear piercing myself. And but that was the funny thing is my mother would never let me get my ear pierced as a kid. I had to wait until I, was a late teen and was able to get it done myself. All right, moving along here. Excuse me, it's the dry weather here. It's just killing me. That's why I'm chugging my mug of water here. And we got one more thing in parenting. It's a cool little tip for you. And I don't want to share the specific thing because it's not mine to share. However, I'm sure with a little Googling, you'd find something similar. So my kid loves the parade, the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. She's watched it every year. But I mean, her first Thanksgiving, she obviously was very, very young. She was a little potato. And really her second Thanksgiving, she was barely a year old. So I don't know if she remembered. But ever since then, she has fond memories of waking up. We make cinnamon rolls. I have a little coffee. I throw a little Irish cream in the coffee. And we watch the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. This year, and actually, they've done it through Girl Scouts. So again, that's why you can probably Google it yourself. I'm not going to share that just because it's not, I did not put it together. But Girl Scouts put together a scavenger hunt for the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. And it's a list of things that you need to find throughout the parade. And it's just a brilliant idea because we're watching it anyway. But it adds a fun element to the watching of the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. So if you have kids and you're interested, like I said, I'm sure you could go and Google and find a similar scavenger hunt list. You could probably even, it is tough because every year there's different balloons and stuff, but you probably, when certain stuff's coming. The parade's ending with Santa. There's marching bands. They're all walking by Macy's. So there's certain things that you could even just put together a list for yourself. But I'm really looking forward to doing that tomorrow morning. and our tradition that is watching the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. All right. Oh. You can tell I'm off my when we go like 3 weeks without an episode, I'm always a bit off my game too, and then couple that with the dry weather and everything else, and running around like a madman. Luckily, I didn't have to go to the grocery store. My wife went today, took the kid, and she had some work to do. It was a work day, luckily kind of light because clients and stuff are all leaving town and everything, and I kept being like, if you're gonna go to the grocery store, go now. And like 2 hours later, I was like, man, I was really trying to get you out the door earlier. And she said it was madness, absolute madness. And in fact, I had her pick up some frozen corn, and we're putting the groceries away, and she goes, here's the frozen corn, and here's a different frozen corn. I was like, why'd you get 2 different frozen corns? She's like, because that's all they had. So I think she got like the last 2 bags of frozen corn at the grocery store. But along with that, like 50, I'm not even exaggerating, 15 pounds of potatoes that I got to get up tomorrow and peel and boil and mash and make taste good for Thanksgiving dinner. So it's just absolute madness, but I always find a way to get in the studio. I'm pretty sure, I want to say it's like every year that we've done night before Thanksgiving episode. I might be off a couple years with that, but definitely our first year. Like I remember original studio and everything was in the studio night before Thanksgiving, putting together a new episode with a newborn baby in the next room over, fortunately being comforted and tended to by my wife as I was given some time to go in and record. All right, let's talk about some common sense. So it is the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, like I've said 100 times so far in this episode, and I'll probably say it 100 times more before we get to the end. There's a little trend called Blackout Wednesday. And see, when I was younger and in college and in my 20s and had more energy and everything else and would be going out of town, now I was only going to San Diego, I wasn't going far. We just called it the night before Thanksgiving because you met up with all your friends that were coming into town and you tend to go out to a bar and drink and all this other stuff. I've been guilty of this myself. Never blacked out. I will say I'm not a blackout from drinking person, although, I enjoy my fair share. I was definitely stumbling home this past Saturday on my birthday because we were out at a bar and everyone keeps handing me beers. And fortunately, I had a good shout out to Phil, who's going to listen to this, for walking me home and making sure I got home safe because I was fine. I wasn't going to pass out on the street corner, but I was definitely not walking in a straight line. But I wasn't driving or anything. I was literally walking from the bar to my house. But Blackout Wednesday, always the day before Thanksgiving. I give a certain respect to this, but the reason I want to bring it up in common sense is, yes, have fun, be smart, don't get behind the wheel, don't make yourself sick from drinking, and especially a lot of emotions tend to come up because, maybe you go to your grandparents' house or your parents' house, or you get into some argument with them and you're like, I'm going to go out and see it's a whole thing. So fully recognize that it can be fun. Just if you're going to participate in Blackout Wednesday, just make sure you're doing it safely and not putting yourself or others in danger, because that's never good. All right, we go from, and there, see, now my dog's barking. I used to feel bad about the dogs barking when I originally started the podcast, and because we had a different dog at that time. And then you listen to Kevin Smith's podcast, and he was constantly yelling at his dog to stop barking. So y'all going to deal with the dog in the background. I have a feeling he's barking at an Amazon delivery person right now because I got some Amazon stuff that's supposed to be delivered today. But there he is. He's back there. He's just got to make his voice heard. For a little dog, he's very loud. My dog is not large. If you're interested in seeing how big the dog is, at SoCal Sean, right there on Instagram, and you'll see photos of Falcor, my dog. All right, so we moved from Blackout Wednesday to Black Friday. I realize there's a Thanksgiving in between. But here's the disclaimer I want to talk about. Don't go crazy for consumerism on Black Friday. Like I said earlier, I am not one that goes out on Black Friday. I have done it once or twice. In fact, I remember a few years ago, I found myself at Target on Black Friday, but it was like late in the day, and what happened was my wife had ordered a new Christmas tree. And so we went late in the day, picked it up at the counter, and didn't have to deal with lines and all this other stuff. So I'm not really big into doing that stuff. What I will say is if you want to do those things, look at the small businesses. Look to support those small businesses. Like for me, for example, all the bands I really love, they'll do Black Friday sales. And so you're like, cool, I'm going to go order some records and stuff like that. In fact, did I even put that on here? No, I didn't. Oh, yeah, I did. Talk about that in entertainment news. So look at those things because that's That's a better way to go. So you're not supporting, as I said, I got Amazon stuff coming. That's more, I got like soap and stuff coming. I'm not buying a ton of gifts. I like to do that through smaller businesses, support those smaller businesses. And then you don't have to get up super early on Black Friday and go stand in line at a store to get something like a television for yourself and here's your yearly reminder. TVs are not the cheapest on Black Friday. They're actually the cheapest in January and February leading up to the Super Bowl, the NFL Super Bowl. So just keep that in mind if you're going to pick up a TV as well. And then, of course, we move into what has recently become known as Small Business Saturday. So Saturday, a lot of small businesses will be running specials and everything. You'll be able to support those small businesses. And then and here's a hot little tip, depending on your credit card, I know Amex does this. They give like a cash back if you're supporting small businesses on Small Business Saturday. So find those local mom and pop shops, those smaller businesses that are not attached to a giant corporation. Give them your business. You might spend a couple dollars more, but you're stimulating the economy in a much more efficient way as opposed to just feeding money to Daddy Bezos there over at Amazon. So keep that in mind. All right, fantasy football. We're going to talk fantasy football for a sec. For those of you not familiar, I don't know why you wouldn't be familiar, because even if you don't follow sports, you know this fantasy football thing. You create your own team and you get points, players on different teams and everything else. Not important. I played it for a couple years and I realized, this is not for me. I'd find myself cheering against my own teams that I liked because I had a player on another team. It's just ridiculous. And then you got to keep track of it. You got to set line. Not for me, but I get the appeal. But something that's come up recently is, even if you don't watch sports, sports injuries are very common, and football is a very violent sport. People often get hurt, broken legs, torn joints, sprained things, all kinds of concussions, for Christ's sake. And it's come up. It's really been building for a couple years, but it really has come to a head this year because there's an elite player, wide receiver in the NFL who's gotten hurt, and he's one of the few that have come out and said finally, I don't care, because people were complaining, yo, can you come back and play because I need your fantasy points. So Justin Jefferson of the Minnesota Vikings finally came out and said, you know what, I don't care about your fantasy team. What's more important to me is my health. And this is another thing I don't like about fantasy sports. Because we are literally, you end up looking at these human beings. They're human beings. They have families, parents, however else you want to look at it. And what's more important to people outside of their well-being is their silly little fantasy points. Common sense says we need to worry about the person. Have you heard of concussions and CTE? No. They are not dancing animals for your entertainment. They are professional athletes. They get paid a lot of money to do it. I realize that. But it's not all about your silly little... It's literally called fantasy football. It's not real. So get over yourselves. If you're somebody who likes to complain about that, just knock it off. Oh, you didn't give me enough points. Just knock it off. They're human beings. You can play and everything is fine, but don't treat people like they are not human beings. Becomes very frustrating. All right. There's a new Netflix show, Squid Game: The Challenge. That's right. You might remember a year or two ago we talked about this. So Squid Game, wildly popular show, limited series that was on Netflix a couple years ago. And it's basically rightfully so, a dig at capitalism. And so here we have, and if you're not familiar with the show, and it's not a show I'm not into watching people die gruesomely, however you want to look at it. But that's what happens is people play these games and they're promised money, but you're also high likelihood you're going to die. So now Netflix has decided they're going to, and fortunately they're not actually killing people. I don't think you could get away with that, but they have decided to capitalize on this and create a reality show where people are doing Squid Game type challenges in order to win money. They have completely missed the point of the show, despite the fact that the show was on Netflix, on their streaming services. And like I said, if you remember a year or two ago, I had talked about the blind ignorance of one Mr. Beast, because he saw fit to put on his own Squid Games. And it's like, dude, did you not understand the concept of the show? Well, he's not the only one, and we have a large studio here, large streaming service, who doesn't understand the concept of the show. And like I said, I realize people aren't going to die, but come on. You're humiliating people, and you're not understanding that the original show was a commentary on the evil that is capitalism. All right. Apple and texting. I don't worry about these things because I use Android. I actually just got it. I think since the last episode, I picked up the new Pixel Pro 8. Fantastic phone. Got myself a new Pixel Watch 2. Haven't gotten a new watch in like 10 years or something like that. So it's finally time for a new smartwatch. But some news came out of Apple. It's going to make a lot of people really happy. In fact, I saw a lot of people already really happy about it. You often hear, they have their own iMessage. And you often hear iPhone users complain, oh, there's a green bubble ruining the group text. Well, I'm sorry that my bubble is green because I use an Android phone. Get over yourselves. However, Apple finally came out and said they're finally switching to the same kind of text, and there's some technical jargon behind it, the same text messaging system that really all other carriers have adopted for years. So we're going to see the end of green bubbles. Text messages, for those of you that use Apple, is going to be more secure. Because that was the other thing. Everyone always complains about the green bubbles, which I'm like, who cares what color the bubble is? But the texts were less secure because Apple didn't want to integrate the stuff the correct way, and they have finally capitulated on that. And you're going to see those changes coming out. So now you're not going to know if somebody's texting you from an Android and you've got an iPhone. I rarely notice these things, except I do, and it's going to be the reaction things, because I talked about this years ago when Apple first added reactions to their iMessages, and if you were on Android, you'd get like another, instead of seeing the reaction like you do on social platforms, like a little heart or a thumbs up or whatever, it would send you another message, like auto-generated message that would say, blah, 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 liked your message or whatever it was. I was always like, are people typing this out? No, it's just that's how it was set up. So all that's going to be integrated in a much more positive way. That's the only time I really notice it is it'll say replied to a certain text in a thread, and it says, and I don't even know if those messages show up the same way on an iPhone, but that's the only time I even really notice it. Especially, I've been an Android user for like 10 years, almost 10 years. Got off that iPhone once I left Disney. Disney required you to either have a BlackBerry or an iPhone. And I'm old enough where I had a BlackBerry at Disney because you had to have a BlackBerry before the iPhone came out. And you still had to have a BlackBerry a little while after the iPhone came out. But then they did allow iPhones for the, so you could have all the Disney email and that good stuff on your phone. All right, Aquabats and Defiant. We're not going to talk about this in entertainment news. That's what I mentioned, Dickie Barrett, and I said we're going to talk more about this as we get along into the episode, and now is that time. For those of you not familiar with Defiant, I'm going to talk a little bit more about them when we get into our Punk in the Park recaps over the next 2 episodes. This is a band full of musicians who were kicked out of their other bands for being anti-vax, among many other things. So Dickie Barrett is the singer of this new band, The Defiant, because they're so defiant. And people know this, and people in the circles that I run with in the punk scene have rightfully so been calling people out. I told you Dickie Barrett's arguing with people on Instagram, seeing a lot of posts, and Aquabats decided to add them to their December show at House of Blues, which is very odd in so many ways because Aquabats are a very kid-friendly, family-friendly band, and so you wouldn't think that they would take this kind of political stance with a band like The Defiant, but they did. And they're getting rightfully skewered for doing so. People have called for them to remove Defiant from the bill. Now, I realize it has a lot to do with their booking company and blah, 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 blah. But people are up in arms, rightfully so, about this whole situation. And I think the Aquabats are going to end up regretting letting this move forward because they shouldn't be associated with the Defiant. And I know I mentioned, and I'll get into some, actually, we're going to get into Punk and Park recap day 1 right now. I know I said I was going to go out and boo the Defiant, which I did not do at Punk in the Park, although I'll talk about some other stuff we did. Only because they had the beer garden at the very far end away from the stages this year. And so it was like I could stop drinking my free beer tasting beers, walk over and boo Defiant for a few minutes, or I can stay here with my friends and just continue sampling very tasty beers in the beer tasting area. I chose to stay in the beer tasting area. All right, so like I said, Punk in the Park recap. Man. So we're going to get into some of that right now. Day 1, I think we're going to save day 2 for the next episode, which is probably going to be Monday. Just scheduling note for everyone out there. We're probably going to come in and do Common Sense Sunday on Monday, so less than a week away. So look for an episode around that time, and then we'll get into our normal, regularly scheduled episodes through December, up through the holiday special, and then, of course, the holiday hiatus that we take every year. So Punk in the Park day one, I had a bunch of friends going out there, and fortunately this year, I was staying in a hotel down there, but me and my friend Adam, who is a big contributor at King Rock Podcast, we actually headed out to the canyon there early. So we were actually right at the front of the line, got our IDs checked, and we were probably in the first 15 people to get in, which was fantastic. And we're just hanging out. You know, it's great because you're like, oh, you're going to be bored in line. It's like, no, it's a bunch of punks going to a punk festival. Just hang out and talk for, 45 minutes to an hour. That makes the time go fast. So we did that, and then the gates obviously open. Now, first thing I did was I went straight to the Vans booth because Vans had made custom Vans for Punk in the Park 2023. I was a little bit worried that they would sell out of those Vans. So straight there, picked up the Vans, went and stashed them. I'm not going to give away where I stash my things, but when you have friends, close friends that have resources, you don't end up having to carry shoes around the entire day. So that was the first thing. Then, of course, we go and hit some vendors and then straight over to the beer tasting area. One of the first highlights of Saturday at Punk in the Park was Polly Van Dam playing her first solo show ever. She absolutely killed it, and it was very amusing because she came out to that Eminem song that the one that's Guess Who's Back, Shady, and it was like, all right, I like it. She did a cover of the Nirvana song or the Polly song, and all very well done. Thoroughly enjoyed that. Definitely a highlight of Saturday, and then we went back to the beer tasting. Just fantastic beer, and this year I feel like they stepped up their beer game this year. And on that same note, they had the Stone beer, of course, but there was a collaboration between Stone and one of the other breweries that they put out like an IPA, and I was like, sweet. We don't have to drink Stone IPA for the whole weekend because the beer tasting ends at 3, and then you still have another 7 hours. So even if you're not much of a drinker, you're tending to go to the bar and get 1 or 2 beers, throughout the rest of the night. So that was really nice as well. All the friends were out there. There was many friends were missing this year just because of scheduling conflicts and everything else, and the cruise, the Salty Dog flogging Molly cruise, kind of conflicted with it because a lot of people were heading out to Florida. They didn't shove off the same weekend, but it was a day or two after Punk in the Park ended. And fantastic lineup on Saturday. There's many that that's the funny thing is we go to these festivals and bands that you've known for a long time, but you haven't really been listening to, and then you see them again and you're like, oh my gosh, fantastic. So much fun seeing them. The Dickies was one of those bands, and Death by Stereo. Although Death by Stereo I see a lot more. Dickies I hadn't seen play since the first Punk in the Park, so it was really great being reminded of those. And then, of course, the Suicide Machines, which was an absolute highlight. I hadn't seen the Suicide Machines live in probably 20 plus years. They're not out in California all that much. They're from Detroit, so they tend to play the East Coast a lot more. So it's fantastic seeing them, and they definitely put together a set for older fans. A lot of tracks off of their original album, which many people will argue is one of the best ska albums of all time. So it was great seeing them. And like I said, Circle Jerks and GBH were fantastic. And then we left at the beginning of Pennywise. And here's the thing. I enjoy Pennywise. I've seen them so many damn times. But if you see Pennywise in Orange County, it is a certain crowd of people. That is not really my cup of tea, being around that crowd of people. No offense if you're from Orange County and hang out with kind of that, we call it the bro crowd. And just so you know, we were able to get the festival beers in cans all day. They had a special custom can. And I want to say it was during GBH, I went to get a beer and they were pouring it in a plastic cup for me. And I just kind of smirked at the bartender and I was like, oh, getting ready for Pennywise, huh? And she's like, yep. Because they don't want people are going to start throwing cans and everything during Pennywise. It was just absolute madness. So we left kind of at the beginning of Pennywise, got the hell out of there. I grabbed my shoes, and as we're getting ready to leave, this was kind of one of the wild stories of Saturday night. I'm standing right in front of the Cali Vibes booth, and Vince is a very good friend of mine who lives a half a block away, and Alvin, who lives not nearby but always helps out with Cali Vibes at these festivals. They're both there, and so I'm hanging out with them, and I see this guy kind of causing a ruckus, and he's walking away from the Portos, and he's being loud and kind of, you could tell he's kind of looking for a fight. And I even heard him say oh, they beat me up. And I'm looking around like, what are you talking about? So I stood there for a minute because I just didn't want him coming running into the Cali Vibes booth. And I wasn't about to, get into it with this guy. And then there was a vendor at one of the booths across the way, big guy, bigger than me, much bigger than me, like big guy. He kind of walks out and he's like, okay. And then the guy obviously seemed very drunk. So I'm like, okay. And then I could see this guy's kind of trying to move him away from a booth. So I go walking over there. I have my Vans bag on my shoulder with my brand new Vans shoes in it. And the guy gets him to calm down a little bit and says, here's a bottle of water. So I'm there. I'm like, yeah, do you need anything? Then he proceeds to start yelling again, throws the water bottle like all over the two of us and himself. I'm like, are you kidding me right now? So now the box for my Vans is not soaked, but it ruined the box a little bit. So I'm kind of annoyed, and then it's funny because I'm standing there like trying to dry off the box and everything. End up sitting him down on a bench right near there. And right as we're doing that, because we're like, buddy, it's okay, calm down. And he's lit, and I kid you not, he's screaming, and I quote, "There is a Mexican trying to kill me." And this is when we realize this guy's not just drunk. He's clearly on some kind of hallucinogenic recreational drugs. That's fine. As soon as we get him on the bench, paramedics come over with like a wheelchair, and I'm like, okay, y'all got him. You got him. So that was how my Saturday night ended. Not in the best way, but still had a fantastic time. And we're going to save the day 2 recap for the next episode, which will be Common Sense Sundays this coming Monday, like I said, with that scheduling note. NoFX made their final tour announcement for the tour dates in 2024. We found out there's going to be 3 days in Los Angeles. It's actually in San Pedro. So expensive, though. So a lot of their tour stops have been like $150 for the third day. The third day in a row in Los Angeles, which is going to be what they're saying is their last show ever. They're actually charging $250. And I was like, well, I'm not the biggest NoFX fan. Maybe if I find some cheap tickets, I'll go. Maybe if I see the supporting bands, it's worth going. But I'm not looking to pay $250. I paid less than that for my my punk rock bowling ticket a few weeks ago, and that's 4 days of a festival. It's not 1 day of some support bands and NoFX. But if you're interested in that, make sure you check out the tour dates because those have all been dropped now, and tickets are already available. All right, the All Right, my boys over there, the All Right boys, and Jeff. I mean, they're all the All Right boys, but Johnny, Jamie, and Jeff. They released their debut album on vinyl almost 2 weeks ago. Trying to think, weekend of November 11th, and they had a pseudo release show here in Eagle Rock, which is not far from where I live. So, of course, I headed out there. I was able to shoot some photos of them as well as a couple of the support bands. And the really cool thing for me is I'm going to brag for a minute. Their vinyl actually has my photo on the back. So if you're able to pick up a copy of In Loving Memory by the All Right, that is my photo on the back, and I'm credited very much so. I've got it sitting over there. I'm not going to bust it out for the video because it's too far for me to reach. It's sitting over there because and I know my buddy John's going to yell at me. He says, "Why do you frame records?" And I don't. But this one, I was like, okay, I'm going to frame this one, put it on the wall, because it's my first photo to like actually be on a vinyl release. They killed it. They get better every single time. And if you're not listening to the All Right, you are missing out, so make sure you check them out. And as far as upcoming shows, I'm going to be at the Lodge Room in Highland Park this Saturday for the Western Standard Time Ska Orchestra. Going to be out there with a pretty big group of people. So if you're going to be out there, I will have some stickers. Look for me, say what's up, and I'll throw some stickers your way, especially because it's just so close to home for me. Like, I could walk. I may end up walking. It's like less than a mile away. The problem is where I live, there's some hills, and it's not too bad like if you're walking certain places, but if you end up having to go up and over the hill and down, it's more tiring despite not being that far. And one thing I want to leave you with on this fine Thanksgiving Eve, and it's just a random note. You always hear people say there's no Thanksgiving movies and blah, blah, blah. And I always point out to people, no, there is a fantastic Thanksgiving movie, and it is called Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, if you have not seen that film. It is obviously from the 80s because it is Steve Martin and John Candy. Fantastic movie. It is a thoroughly a Thanksgiving movie. It takes place over Thanksgiving. They're traveling home for Thanksgiving. But it's funny because today I was reminded, scrolling through some kind of website or whatever it was, that there is in fact and I'm sure there's others, but there is another solidly Thanksgiving movie that's been around since the 90s, and that's a movie called Son-in-Law with Pauly Shore. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say it's a fantastic movie, but it is very much centered around Thanksgiving. So now I'm going to remind people that there are at least 2 Thanksgiving movies that you can easily watch on a yearly basis. I'm not highly recommending Son-in-Law. It is Pauly Pauly Shore, very funny in the 90s. I've seen all of those silly movies. I think Son-in-Law is pretty remotely funny, but, it's Pauly Shore. Maybe it's not your cup of tea. All right. On that note, that is going to do it for episode 134. Before we go, a couple reminders. You can follow us on the social platforms in multiple locations. One of those would be facebook.com/GoTellItToTheWall. Also, youtube.com/GoTellItToTheWall or @GoTellItToTheWall. And, of course, my personal Instagram, which is @SoCalSean. Lots of photo content coming out there over the next couple weeks as well, so make sure you're following on there. And, of course, make sure you bookmark SeanO'RourkeLive.com, our official website for anything and everything pertaining to Go Tell It to the Wall and me personally, Sean O'Rourke. And if you want to support us financially, you can do that through Patreon or through our merch website, both of which link directly from SeanO'RourkeLive.com. So please check those out if you see fit to do it and have the means to do so. It is greatly appreciated to keep this studio up and running. All right, like I said, that is going to do it for episode 134 of Go Tell It to the Wall podcast. Should be back Monday with a fresh new Common Sense Sunday, moving back to, we switch back and forth depending on the day of the week and everything else. But your somewhat regularly scheduled programming that is Common Sense Sundays, though it will be on a Monday, this upcoming Monday most likely. So keep that scheduling note in mind. And we will see you on the next one. Not same wall place, not same wall time. But as always, this has been episode 134 of Go Tell It to the Wall, hosted by me, your absolute favorite podcast host, the one and only Sean O'Rourke. And until next time, Wall fans, common sensors, don't forget, no matter what you do, no matter who you're with, no matter where you go, and especially no matter why you are doing it, always use common sense.